So I am Erik Sexton, and here is another episode of Commercial Real Estate Uncovered with me, Erik Sexton. I have Eric Larkin here with me, who is at NAI as well. Eric, thanks for being here with me today on this Friday.
Thank you for having me.
So the reason I wanted to have Eric in today is we've had some big brokers on the show, but you've actually been the top broker at our office the last couple of years. I keep trying to nail you at that spot, but I keep falling short by a couple. But one thing that you and I talk about, because we're in the same office, we share a lot of notes, but we get into more things than just real estate and like how you stay on top of the market. But we've talked about like goal setting things and like what's your why, even down to like we have a shared Whoop, like the fitness tracker, the Whoop group in our office. So
The Whoop group.
the Whoop group, yeah. There's like 5 or 6 of us in there. So yeah, thanks for being here with me today. We're at the end of summer. Your kids are back at school. How was your summer?
Summer was great. Kids are back in school, which is also great. It's about time. Just looking forward to a new year here. It seems like the school year kicks off a new year.
Yeah, it kicks off the new year, but also people get back to work. I always notice as soon as kids get back into school, the real estate market picks back up. So what about so I wanted to start this episode a little different. Tell me about your family a little bit. You're married and you have 3 kids.
I'm married, yeah. I have a beautiful wife named Elena. We've been together for 20 years. We're actually both celebrating 20 years together and 20 years as residents in Las Vegas. I moved in 2004. We both did. And it'll be 12 years of marriage this October. And we have 3 kids, 9, 7, and 4. So it's a lot of fun.
So you're familiar with Disney movies.
Yeah, I love kids movies, actually. I never knew until I had kids, and they're fantastic.
Is there one that one of your kids wants to watch? You're like, cool, I get to watch this again.
I love Trolls.
Trolls.
All 3 Trolls. Absolutely fantastic movies.
I don't have kids, so I don't know how many of those movies there are.
There are 3 of them. I hope there's 3 more.
What about like a personal hell? Like your kid's like, I want to watch this, and you're like, dear God, please VCR don't work, or Netflix.
Not really. I've seen enough of the younger kids stuff. So my third, Kendrick, is 4. I've seen all the 4-year-old shows before, so I'm kind of over those, but not really. If they want to watch it, it's good with me.
Pretty good to go. Okay. Well, so we're going to get into a little further in the podcast. One thing that I had Dan Doherty here on the episode. I actually had Leslie Houston from your team was here. We've had Doug Roberts. We've had a couple kind of big players in this industry, and we've talked about, habits that people have, things they do to stay sharp. But one thing I have not talked to people about, and I know you kind of believe in this stuff, is goal setting. And like, is there something like that you wrote down and you made a specific goal and you've obtained it over the last couple of years since you started this?
Yes, but there's not one I can point to. I think what I've learned is it's the smaller goals that really stack up. Something as simple as trying to get both sides of my family together for a family vacation in the upcoming summers. You have to send the text messages, you have to send the emails, make the telephone calls, organize the place. Seems like a small goal, but if you look at life, that's a big thing, and you make it happen, you check it off. And then in the real estate business, very simple things like keeping track of your monthly cold calls. It's the routines that are the things we check off and are, proud of. I don't necessarily have big, hairy, audacious goals, or one that I said, hey, I'm going to do this, and I did. But it's the little things that add up that make a success. I think that's what I've learned through that program.
The small wins, counting the small wins, like even getting up on time or making your bed. Like I was always the guy that I just woke up and got right out of the house quickly. But one of the things I realized when I came home, I was hectic because my house was in disarray. So that was one of my small goals, was to make my bed and make sure I put my gym clothes away. And like those small things add up and turn into, just habits in everyday life. What is that? What's that expression? How you do one thing is how you do everything.
Right.
I found that to be more true as I've built a team where I'm like, oh my, people are watching how I do. Am I making phone calls? I can't hold them to be accountable. But
it's the small things. And you mentioned your gym clothes. I just started. We mentioned getting back to school and getting back to a routine. I want to go to the gym more often than I was. One thing I do is I put my gym shoes, socks, underpants, shorts, everything I'm going to wear to the gym right at the foot of my bed. And I literally get out into my gym shoes and gym clothes. So I'm dressed for the gym no matter what I do. There's no excuse. I've already gotten dressed for the gym. You just have to get there now. It's the little things.
So it is the little things, and it goes, those routines at home go into your practice. And as I've mentioned, you've been the top guy at our office at NAI Excel a couple years in a row, but there was a big one last year, and I think you had this the year before. You were actually in the top 100 agents NAI globally, which we have, I think, 6,000. And not only were you on it, but Mike Kenny on your team was on that top 100. So I want to talk about how you built your team a little bit. And the reason I bring that up is the proximity to watch how people build teams, but also like I watched you build your team. You had Mike Kenny was with you, and there's another guy who's not at NAI anymore when I joined NAI. And you guys were starting to kind of put your process together, and it evolved to adding, what do you have, 7 people now?
We've just five here and 1 remotely, 6.
So it's like the whole west side of our office is the Larkin Industrial Group. I think you guys take up 3 offices now, but it's cool. It's really cool to watch that grow. And we've talked about proximity. Like when you came back from an SIOR conference and you were telling me about these virtual assistants, and I was like, I don't know what it is or how much it costs, but it sounds good. Like, let me try it. And it's been a huge help. But I'm jumping around here a little bit, but yeah, well, I wanted to go, so this is connected as far as like the goals setting and building your team. So you started, let's jump even back further. So you used to be on, before you had your own team and an army of junior agents, you were a junior agent with Kevin Higgins back at Voight. How long?
2009, I got into the business. I was on a team with Kevin Higgins and Garrett Toff.
Okay.
At the time, it was Voight Real Estate Services, and we had a team of 4 people. And it was really that, the training and the program that I went through is the same that I use today for juniors.
So we all know Kevin Higgins. He's been in town forever. But what is a one takeaway that you might have gotten when you were a junior agent, like an aha moment where you were like, oh, this is why you're on a team. Like, this is why you don't try to do this yourself.
There's just so many facets to this business. There's sales and marketing and the contracts, and I can go on and on. You just can't do it all yourself. It's impossible. And you really need to think everything through. So I guess the takeaway was I was really fascinated by how Kevin and Garrett and pulled me in, and I think Diane was on the team at the time. Anytime there was a decision to be made for a client, we'd just all get in the same room and talk it out. Different scenarios. What about this? What about that? And it's really just a collaborative business, I think, if you want to do it properly.
Well, bouncing ideas off each other. Like I have Alyssa Parks and Camila Rosales who work with me, and we have a VA as well. And I talk to them 20 times a day. Right. But even like that collaboration, like I come to your guys' office and I bounce ideas off of you guys all the time. So I totally agree with that. Like you need to be in an environment where you can collaborate, because the people come up with ideas that you might not think of. So talking about Voight, when they were here, I loved your guys' office. I think it was on Rainbow back in the day. I was at a small boutique shop, and my office was like in the back of a warehouse, not a nice warehouse, just like a warehouse. And I walked into your guys' office one time to pick up keys. I was like, what is this magical place? But that's not there anymore. So after you were with the Higgins team at Voight, I know they went on to go to CBRE. Where did you go after that?
So I did a short time with a friend of mine, Mark Musser.
Okay. Yeah, he's been in town a while.
Musser Capital. My time at Voight Real Estate Services, a lot of our clients, almost all of our clients, were receivers and banks. It was the great financial crisis. There was a lot of foreclosures and really good buys, to be blunt. And I learned in brokering those while I was at Voight Real Estate Services, how the process worked and where the opportunities were as a buyer. So I met with Mark, and he had some guys that wanted to invest, and I knew where some investments were in town, and we just got together and started doing really small investment sales. But this was the tail end of the financial crisis, so it was pretty picked over, and there were few and far between. It was kind of that type of business was trailing off. So we had some fun. We bought a property for pennies at the auction on 4th Street. If you've never been there, the craziest thing,
Downtown. The auctions downtown.
Yeah, we bought I say we, but it's really the investor, but we were able to put some money into it. But a beautiful brand new industrial building on Rainbow and Sunset, probably worth at the time $800,000, call it $3 million now. Opening bid $400,000. Any takers? $400,000 and 1 penny. Anybody else? There was nobody else at the auction. We bought the property for $400,000 and 1 penny. It was crazy. It was wild times. So that, like I said, it didn't last. It was the tail end of that of the financial crisis, and I wanted to get back into more traditional brokerage, tenant representation. The full array of brokerage. So from there, I met Pat Sauter and went to NAI. That's been 11 years now.
11 years. Time. It's just nuts to say how fast this time goes by. 11 years at NAI. I remember last year they gave you like a decade placard for being there, because I think you're the longest person there now, because Pat Sauter has moved on to a different brokerage. And yeah, even me, they said 2008. I was there 5 years. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how fast it goes by.
Having fun.
I like our office though. I think we've built a really good environment. A lot of Brian Hauser came over. He kind of does his own thing with industrial. We've got a good industrial group where everybody kind of just picks. Goes to proximity where
we have Ruger.
We have Ruger, my dog. That was one of the main reasons when I was looking at different brokerages. That was one of my questions, and everybody said, "No, you can't bring your pet." I'm like, "Well, then I'm not going to work here." Priorities.
That is the honest truth. I remember that we were trying to get you to come over, and it's like, I think we can tell him he can have his dog.
Well, how I got Ruger was my old managing director, who was actually one of my best friends. His name is Robert Hassman. He, at the time, had an infant and some smaller dogs, and they bought this puppy, and it just didn't work. And they're like, hey, do you want to take him? I'm like, heck yeah. So he was at work anyways, because our director and who owned the Sperry Van Ness at the time, they were franchises. So I was like, he was just used to bringing them. So anyways, so going from there, so you went to NAI, and I wanted to talk about your process a little bit, because you're an SIOR, you're a top agent in our company, and top 100 out of 6,000 agents globally. So people listening who are trying to get into this business,
33,
grow their team. What?
33.
You were number 33 out of 100. That's a big deal, though. I mean, 6,000 agents to be 33, and Vegas isn't it's not a Dallas, Texas, or an LA, or I mean, like those they have submarkets with more warehouse space than we do in our entire city.
No, it's a managed network. It's not a big corporation, and being an industrial has been great, because we've been in an industrial boom for 10 years, especially in Las Vegas. So a lot of things went right, but when those rankings came out, I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
So when you give advice, I think people who are newer to this business or trying to level up should listen, and that's why I'm trying to get these kind of guests on here, because sure. I learned something when talking to people. I mean, when you and I go get coffee, we talk about ideas, and heck, this podcast was even one of those ideas. I was like, I should start a podcast, and actually Dylan, one of the guys who owns the studio we're in, was one of the guys who said I should start it. So it's all about proximity. So you went to NAI, and you had Mike Kenny come on. You had another guy, Philip, nice guy, he went and did his own thing as well. And now you have, like, can you kind of walk us through how your team's structured? Because you said you have 6 people. Kind of how you divide and conquer, because not everybody's doing the same thing. But yeah, right. Can you kind of walk, after you've built your team, who does what, and how you came up with that system?
Well, it was really trial and error, a lot of error. It was born out of necessity, really. So when I came to NAI, when was that? It was 2014. There was a lot of inbound traffic from the network, meaning tenant representation opportunities that took up a lot of my time. So I would partner with guys from Dallas, Chicago, the East Coast. They had clients that had requirements in Las Vegas. So we would put together the occupier services package and collaborate with that broker and find them space here in town. Okay. And that was taking all of my time. They were bigger deals. They were great deals. But I sat back and I said, this is not sustainable. I haven't made a prospecting call in 6 months. I have to, if these deals stop coming to town, then I am behind the 8 ball. And I had been talking to my friend Mike at the time. Mike and I grew up together, went to high school together. He was in Phoenix. He's got 3 kids of his own at the time. I think his son was 2, 3, 4 years old, and he was saying, I'm traveling a lot. I'm missing some of my son's milestones. I'm thinking about something different. He was at a corporate job, just wasn't feeling the love, I guess, and traveling too much. And then I said, you know what? I really need somebody to come here and help me with this brokerage business. And it kind of started as a joke, but we just kept talking, and eventually he moved to Las Vegas, and I taught him the tenant representation side of the business so that he could handle those inbound calls, and I could go back to prospecting. And it's an oversimplification of it, but he still does that today. That's his bailiwick, is tenant representation, and I call on a lot of owners and kind of put processes in place. And then we've got Leslie, who does some.
Sorry to interrupt you here. I just wanted to make a comment about Mike. He, like, if you don't know Mike Kenny, he is one of the calmest, likable people. So, like, for tenant rep, he's just like, he can walk in and talk to somebody about anything. He's got a really, like, his demeanor for that is like, you couldn't, in my opinion, you couldn't design a better personality for tenant rep.
No, and I'm glad
calling.
I'm glad you said that, because at first it was tough. I wanted to teach Mike everything that I did and the way I did it, and I didn't have much self-awareness at the time. So what I ended up getting into are these behavioral analysis, behavioral profiles, and just trying to figure out how people were wired. And we figured out that Mike's just complete opposite of me. So the way that I did it was not going to work for him. We eventually figured it out, but at first it wasn't a good fit. It was a little frustrating. But when we figured out that we just do things differently, I became more self-aware. I started learning about how other people were wired, how people like doing certain things, and learning about natural behavioral tendencies. And that's kind of how we shaped the team. I was joking. I said trial and error, but really that was the case. So now we have personality profiles, like 3 or 4 for each of us, that we all sit down, we look at, we know who likes doing certain things, who is naturally better at some things, and we try to fit the job to the person instead of writing a job description and handing it to somebody and expecting them to do it. That could be a complete failure.
It's the best way to build a team, or even just having a partner. You know, you don't want to have a spitting image of yourself, and I think a lot of people try to do that. There's just so many elements of this business. So I appreciate you saying that. The personality test, before I even came to NAI, you emailed me one. You're like, hey, can you do this? I'm like, well, wait a minute. What the hell? Like,
I'm very direct, and I'm very analytical. So
you are very analytical.
I had no problem asking you to take a test, even though I barely knew you, and I just wanted to see where your dots fell to try to figure out how we could work together.
Pass, fail. But anyway, sorry. So with Mike, it was just, you knew him. You tried to do ways kind of you were doing it, and he didn't spin off, but he's on your team. He's doing the tenant rep stuff. And then you mentioned Leslie. You added Leslie, who we had here I had on this podcast a couple weeks ago.
Sure. And Leslie started as the office manager at NAI. I'm trying to think of the name of the company that CoStar kind of... Xceligent.
She has no lost love. Well, anyways, we're not going to go into that.
She came to town to work for Xceligent. Didn't work out for Xceligent. She wanted to stay in the business. She got or get into brokerage. She got a job as our office manager to find her way into brokerage, and it became clear in working with her as the office manager that she would be a very successful broker. So she eventually transitioned to my team. And speaking of how people are wired, we are very similar, but she has a lot more patience than I do. So she really handles almost every transaction once it gets to a certain point. And to be clear, we all work on every deal together and collaborate, but we have our little specialties where we just know somebody will be better suited for that job. And she's really if I said transaction coordinator, that would not be terribly accurate, but that's the easiest way to understand it, I think.
Yeah, she's good at probably delegating if there's something that somebody else needs to do, she probably is good at getting them to do that.
Yeah, we've actually given her the title of the director of the team. So she handles just a lot of back end stuff. And again, she's very patient, can problem solve. She's an absolute rock star and it could prospect. She has prospected, has done a great job. But I really like to prospect. Mike prospects. Zach, our new guy, prospects. We bring in enough that she can just kind of sort through our mess and help us make money.
Well, if you've got everyone prospecting, hopefully you're prospecting well enough to where the prospects turn into actual deals. So you need somebody to run with those.
It works.
So, and you mentioned Zach. So Zach came on about 2 years ago, a year ago?
I think almost 3 now. Time flies. He is recent graduate of UNLV. I think he's got a degree in finance, and he's just wise beyond his years. He's got a real knack for attention to detail. So he's analytical as well, and he's carved out a nice little niche in the last couple of years of industrial outdoor storage, which is
a hot commodity, right?
It's been a hot commodity. We got in early. We've got a great database going. He's got relationships with some of the biggest owners in town. So the timing was very interesting where he could get into the business, and we kind of said as a team, hey, look at this little niche market over here. You just go after that. And he liked it and still does, so we're doing well.
Well, that I appreciate you guys focusing on that because I actually represented a buyer on one of your guys' listings. It was almost a $7 million deal earlier this year. So I saw it. I was like, I have a client for that. So yeah, it's a hot topic. Like I don't even focus on it. I had a client that was calling me about it. We did a almost $7 million deal on that. Okay, so you have Zach. So you've got Mike, Leslie, Zach, who we just talked, and you even added another guy recently who
Seth
started
Wright.
over the summer.
Yeah, Seth. Not much I could say about him yet, except I'm very excited to see what he can do. Just has a lot of energy, and he's been out prospecting with Mike, I know, recently. He and I are going to spend some time together next week, but he just joined the team in the last week here, another UNLV grad, that our managing director, Todd Manning, found. Him and Zach, I think, both came through Todd Manning and his efforts with UNLV and the lead institute there.
Todd's good at sniffing out
talent, yeah.
Some talent from UNLV. I'm happy to see UNLV's producing some. I don't know why they wouldn't, but it's neat to see it directly because I went to UNLV and to have freshmen or recent graduates coming out and coming into our office and doing well and having a career, not just a job, is really cool to see. So that's kind of the reason I wanted to talk about your team was you guys are a top team. You've got top producers. You've got Mike's an SIOR. You're an SIOR. Leslie is a was it a candidate?
Candidate.
So they're working close to become an SIOR, which is cool. And it's neat to see the team built. And like I watched you kind of when I came to UNL or when I came to NAI, I was just a solo guy. I've always worked by myself. I had my listings. I was in my bubble. And I saw as that process went, and I was like, okay, what's going on over there? And I got a VA, and I got Alyssa Park started working with me as she's licensed, but more of a transaction side. And then, Camila came over, who's an SIOR candidate as well. So it's like that's where that proximity's such a big deal. And a theme that I have on this podcast is that if you're trying to accomplish something, like get around people who are doing it. So like you had a mentorship with, Kevin Higgins, who's been in town a long time. You kind of have built your own team now. Not quite the same thing, but a little different, which is really important. What about on the personal side? Like, what do you do? We talked about working out, but how do you stay on top of the market and staying sharp? Are there any books or podcasts that you like to listen to regularly, or that you read every once in a while?
Recently, it's been a lot of Huberman Labs and Dr. Peter Attia. I'm just fascinated with health and wellness, and you mentioned our Whoop team. I wear a Whoop every day, and I'm kind of addicted to looking at the charts and the graphs of my sleep and heart rate variability and all this stuff I barely can understand, but it's just so fascinating. As far as podcasts go, that's where I'm spending that time. Books, you had mentioned you were going to ask about books, and you mentioned SIOR. So my favorite book of all time is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Okay.
And with SIOR, there's some education requirements. So before we got our designation, we all had to go take some courses. And those courses are taught by senior SIORs. I took mine years ago, and there was a guy named Don Aussie, who is a SIOR in Portland, and the same topic came up, any good books for prospecting or sales. And he said, well, before you read any books, if you haven't read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, you need to read that. And that was my biggest takeaway from that class. I got the book, read it, and keep a copy with me. And that would be my recommendation. I'm going to piggyback what Don said.
Read that book. You and I have been in this business for a while, and when I first started, listings were still like in printed binders, and then Property Line was like the one platform, the online listing service that all the commercial brokers used. And innovation, really, technology has taken off to where there's CoStar and LoopNet, and there's more websites came up as listing services. But even in the last year or two, we've seen like 3D tours and drone videos. But where do you see this business going? Kind of, let's call it innovation and technology. Like, are there some tools you're using or that you're excited about that you see coming in that's going to change our industry?
I think AI is kind of the hot topic.
Yeah.
It's going to change everything. I'm excited about it. I use it. It's as simple as I talk to it. I ramble to it is probably a better way to put it. Like, hey, I need to reply to this email. What I want to relay is this, and just ramble into my phone, voice to text. And then I'll say, please turn this into a professional and concise, bullet-pointed email. And boom, it does it. And I can reread it and edit it. And that's it. Instead of having to sit there and type it all out, it saves a ton of time. And that's a very simple way to use AI. It's going to be very powerful on many different fronts, but I think that's the most exciting thing right now as far as innovation and technology goes.
Well, even how advanced it is, how quickly it came out. I mean, one of the things that I do, I'll drop a file, like a lease or a purchase agreement into it and be like, find me the lease rate or something, and it does it, and it does it pretty accurately. I mean, if you're doing a binding contract, I would definitely read it yourself, but if you need to find it quickly, it's so capable already so early on. It's kind of nuts. Or even like writing descriptions. We had our NAI biannual meeting yesterday, and even the way we list properties on our website has AI in it now. When we upload photos, they will actually write a description off of the photos we upload. Did you see that yesterday at the office?
It's amazing. I had to analyze some financial statements today. We're looking at a sale leaseback. I've got the income statement and the balance sheet of the tenant. I uploaded the income statement and the balance sheet and said, hey, we're thinking about buying this property on a sale leaseback basis for $2.7 million. The rent's going to be $25,000 a month. What is the financial capability of this tenant to be able to pay $25,000 a month? And it gave me the full analysis. I didn't check it yet. You always have to check things when you use AI, but what it did so quickly was absolutely amazing.
I used it for a loan term. I'm doing a deal with an interest-only loan, and I literally just put in like, is 9% the dollar amount, carry amount, like break down the payment schedule, and it did it like in a format that I could paste onto the letter of intent. I was like, oh my God, this is total game changer, because that's math that you obviously are doing. And it does it in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, at the very least, it's saving so much time right now, and it's going to continue to do amazing things.
Yeah, it's wild. Even like you said, you dictate. Like you can dictate into that ChatGPT app, like, hey, I have a 5,000 square foot lease. It's at a dollar triple net. The triple nets are 23 cents, 4% annual increases, 2 months of free rent. You can dictate the whole LOI and say, write me a letter of intent format, and it'll bang it out in like 2-3 seconds. It's absolutely crazy. I'm very intrigued to see where things go. Like, have you been given any kind of have you gone to any kind of innovation, like breakout session or something, where somebody maybe said something that they're like, hey, we're going to be able to do 3D renderings or something, where you're like, wow, that's going to be really exciting?
Not yet. It's still, I went through an AI course through the Massimo program that was very interesting. Just the ability to get images based on, again, just you can talk into it and say, hey, I need a picture of this, and it'll do it. But I haven't implemented it on a large scale yet. I don't know how. I'm not really an early adopter. The quick, easy tasks is where I'm at right now.
I even did one where I said I'm on a different training schedule. I'm running a lot more, and I said I wanted to get up to 10 miles, and I do CrossFit 4 times a week. Come up with a running schedule for the next 3 months. Yeah. And I was waiting to get a protein shake at the at the gym, and it broke one down, and I was reading it. I was like, wow, like people pay hundreds of dollars, if not more, to get a coach to do that for them, and now I can get it from ChatGPT in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Talking about NAI or AI and innovation, it's a big time saver. It's a pretty big tool. How do you have work-life balance? I mean, cell phones now are ringing all the time. Like, do you have anything you do to separate yourself from being in the being connected all the time and being in work mode all the time?
That's always a topic, work-life balance, and you used to see it, and you still may see it constantly in like a LinkedIn feed. Everybody likes to talk about it, so I've read about it and I think about it, and I just don't think it exists. There's no such thing as balance. It's all life. One thing that's helped me though is it is all life. It's not that work isn't important. Work, there's financial security and your ability to do things with your life and for your family. But one thing that I don't get hung up on anymore, or I try not to at least, I've gotten better at this, is if I'm doing something, just stay focused on it. Because there's always a million things I want to do. Some of it's work, some of it's life. I might need to fill out a form for my daughter's school in the middle of the day at the office, and that's okay. Don't get aggravated that you're doing a life thing, at the office during work hours.
Yeah.
Just know that is part of what you want to be doing in general. And you can also do a lot of work from home and on the road, and we all learned that during COVID. So where you are and how you're dressed and how you're doing it doesn't seem to matter that much as long as you're taking care of your clients, getting the results you want. It's all about the end game. So I try not to get caught up in, I got to do some work stuff, I got to do some life stuff. Just stay focused on what you're doing and know you're doing it for a reason.
Do you have like a way you unplug where you reset? Like, is there something that Eric Larkin has to do in his routine to stay?
I try to play as unplugged as possible. I'm probably the least plugged person I know. We don't have TV at home on constantly. Like if we're gonna turn on a movie, we turn on a movie, and that's what we're doing. I try not to look. I don't have email on my phone. Some would say that's crazy, but if I'm gonna check email, I check email. I try to turn all notifications off. I don't try to. I have all notifications off. I've got timers on when my phone will actually ring. I try not to say plugged in,
That plugged in thing is a big deal. I have a work phone and a personal phone, and it's funny. My personal phone, I think the only people who have the phone numbers are my mom and my siblings. And if I'm dating somebody, my girlfriend, but single right now, so nobody has that phone number. But and I have my work phone, which has all my social media, and I'm active on social media, so those that are going off a lot. But I realize I'm a lot more productive when I get away from my Instagram and my LinkedIn and all those notifications and put my work phone away and go off and ride my motorcycle or go work out in peace or stop when I'm done working. Like, don't check my email before bed or something like that, because it turns your brain on. But I think having that disconnect is super important.
Sure.
And you said one other thing that's important. I think people get caught up with traveling and vacation. Like, yeah, vacationing and being unplugged, I think, is wonderful, but you can travel and still work. I mean, I remember writing an LOI for a purchase on a motorcycle trip. I pulled over, I popped open my laptop, did a hotspot to my phone, and it was on the top box of my motorcycle writing an LOI. I mean, technology has made, this business really great. You need to be here and tour, but it's also made it so you can be gone more. I mean, COVID really did an example of that, but you did mention something that I have some friends that have kids that really have tried it on. How did you make that decision to at home, not have TV on all the time and sounds like you limit your kids to technology a little bit?
Well, that was before kids, truthfully.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was kind of a time audit thing. Where are you spending your time and what are you doing? I tried to read more. I tried to exercise more. I tried to work more.
Funny you mentioned the Whoop thing, and this is something I want to talk about, but it's ironic I don't have my on right now because I don't wear it when I shower, and I left it on my counter. But that data is crazy. Whether I would encourage anybody who is in some sort of competitive field or not competitive, if you don't pay attention to your sleep, whether it's through an Apple Watch or the Whoop, the data is crazy. And I started to track, you and I have talked about this, but I tracked into it. I started getting my blood work done and testing, like if I don't eat after a certain hour, or knocking off caffeine after a certain hour, like how it affects my sleep. And then it goes into like, how does my workout go and your recovery? And when you really get dialed into like, knowing when to stop eating and when to cut off the caffeine, and your sleep's good and your workout's good, like I see a direct correlation in my productivity at the office. So like that's a big one. Tell me a little bit. Has that helped your professional life? Like
Absolutely.
getting healthy?
I was going to say this, the simplest things like sleep and diet and caffeine intake. I try to delay my second cup of coffee now instead of drinking two. It used to be a ritual. I'd have 2 cups of coffee in the morning when I'd do some work or get ready for the gym. And read that maybe you should delay that second cup to not get an afternoon crash. So I'm doing that now. It's just those little things to keep your mind sharp and stay healthy. And sleep's the biggest one. I mean, you just have to get high quality sleep every night. It's so important.
Oh, that's a game changer. People who think they're going to go out at night and then get 2-3 hours of sleep and be productive all the time. I mean, maybe when you're 22, you could do it for a while, but as you get a little older, like it makes a big difference.
And that used to be all the entrepreneurial buzz, like, oh, I never sleep. It's grind, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Guys that I've on this podcast, and I'm a big proximity guy. I'm fortunate enough to have some kind of like mentors that I'm still poking at to get on this podcast, but they're pretty private people. And I'm just surprised how many of them, they don't do drugs, they don't drink alcohol. They're very specific, like how they get their blood work done. They check their, blood pressure, cholesterol, like testosterone, like all that stuff. And it's really cool to see guys that are even in their 60s that are still very active and very successful in business. And it's because of that. So you actually were one of the guys who got me on the Whoop band with or train. And then once that goes, it's just a tidal wave. You get obsessed with it, or at least I do.
You'll appreciate this. So I actually have a Morpheus now. Have you ever heard of the Morpheus?
Is that the glucose?
I've also worn a continuous glucose monitor from time to time just to see what happens when I eat a half of a pizza. But Morpheus is another heart rate variability and recovery tracker, and sometimes I wear them simultaneously to see how accurate the two are. And they're pretty lockstep though. It's interesting. I get a little carried away with things sometimes,
but it's fun. I mean, I have fun with the data. It's almost like a video game to me. You get a look at that. So if you're trying to level up or even get into this business, is one thing I'm going to continuously say: put the bong down, level off or limit your drinking, and get some good sleep and work out. And like it will directly affect your income because one thing I noticed too, we live here in Las Vegas. People go out a lot when they come here for a convention or something, and that's what the city's kind of here for. But I've realized that when I go to conferences, I just came back from that SIOR conference in Germany, like the people I meet that are at the gym in the morning versus up at 1 o'clock in the morning smoking cigarettes and getting drunk, which I guess there's a time and place for the networking of that. But I've made some really good contacts meeting people in the morning, like at the gym, because they're just operating differently. And maybe I'm just in a different point in my career or personally where that's the place I need to be. But it's kind of interesting. There's a lot of successful people that are not networking at nighttime drinking. Tell me a little bit about like your career. You do a lot of you go to the SIOR conferences and the NAI ones. Do you have like a specific method to like when you go to those? I know there's a lot of people who go to every breakout session and they just want to take in the knowledge. Like, do you do a 50-50 or do you go out and drink and network with everybody?
Definitely not that. I'm more like you. I like to hit the gym. Sessions tend to run late, so I always go in, say I'm going to go to the gym every morning. I'm lucky if I get there half the time. But I do go to breakfast, so I meet folks at breakfast. There's a group of folks that go to conferences and stay out late and never make it to breakfast. But I meet. I've made some good contacts at breakfast and in the gym, like you said. I found that one of a very interesting way to meet people at conferences is sit in the hallway because everybody's got to cross that hallway to get from here to there or look at the board. If there's a poster board of the coming events, everybody goes to that board to see what's happening. And if you're there to meet people, you just kind of hang out. Don't follow the crowd. Just kind of watch it go down and talk to people. I've met a lot of people that way.
This is one thing you told me too, because I used to go to these conferences and just show up and go where it is, but like just go to the breakout sessions and just be an attendee. And you're very counterproductive with that. You try to set up dinners and lunches and like meetings when you go to them, which I've actually started doing, which has been really helpful. Do you still kind of follow that practice? Or
I do, yeah. I've made some very good friends through specifically the SIOR conferences. Nick Chang and Richard Lee and
out of LA,
and Matto in Ohio, and just a whole group of guys that attend the conferences. They're great guys, and if I know I have the opportunity to see them, then yeah, I want to schedule a lunch or a breakfast, and it's once or twice a year. We just get together and chat.
Both those names you just mentioned, NAI Capital, are those guys. They're funny. Every time I meet them, I'm laughing just because they're funny. We see each other in non-work environments. Well, I guess conferences, but afterwards we're getting dinner, and they're good guys. And if you need a broker in LA,
they're peers, and they have teams very similar to ours. So it's easy to get along with them.
So let me kind of keep going on this. Is there a moment where your career, because let me back up a little bit. Like you've hit like where you're like, aha, like I'm good at this. Like this is like a win. Like I've had some deals that I've closed where I'm like, oh my God, like 5 years ago I would have never thought that I'd be working on something like this. But was there like a specific deal maybe that you closed and you're like, wow, that was hard, and fortunately I've had the experience to figure it out?
A few. I think I mentioned the inbound traffic I got from the network that kind of was the reason I needed to think about hiring somebody, and Mike came on board. But when that started, like I said, I was doing some more entrepreneurial stuff with Mark and wanted to get back into traditional brokerage. And the leads that were coming in were 40,000 square feet at the time, big, 150,000 square feet, 30 acres for a build to suit. And I was kind of the Vegas guy, and I'm like, yeah, let's go here. And they all came together, and I think we did a pretty good job. Definitely made some mistakes, but those first couple ones, I was like, wow, this is going to be fun. We're doing some bigger deals. What
about you? You guys did a big DHL build to suit a couple years ago. Was that?
With Scannell Properties. So it's kind of funny. I'd mentioned the financial crisis and where I started in the first 5 years of my career. We built absolutely nothing in Las Vegas on the industrial front. Probably not nothing. There's probably a couple of build-to-suits in there, but speculative development and land sales didn't exist. I didn't learn anything about that in my first couple of years, so it's not a huge part of my practice today, and I just kind of stayed the course of the existing inventory. But through a relationship, we knew Scannell Development. They wanted to put up a speculative facility, and at the time, it was very early in this cycle. There was a perfect rectangle at $3 a foot off of Lamb and Cheyenne, and we put the survey together of 10 different choices that were all listed and available, and that's the one they selected, and we helped them put up a 338,000 square foot building, and DHL leased the whole thing. So it's crazy to think about that property was actually listed and sitting there listed because we built 60 million more square feet after that transaction. So yeah.
It's wild when you first get into this business. I was just happy doing, a 2,000 foot lease to me was like, I thought I was going to be like the next, I don't know, big developer or broker in town. And now you look back, those are deals I like to pass on to junior agents. They're still fun to run around with a little bit because I just like the uses in those buildings, like the business ideas people come up with to make money. And
the people. It doesn't matter if it's 2,000 square feet or 200,000 square feet. The people in this business are just all walks of life, just so fun to interact with everybody in the business.
Especially industrial. Like I was with a guy, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Camila and I went and met with this guy who had opened a business in the 80s, and he was in his early 70s, and he was just dressed with a t-shirt that he'd probably had for 10 years with his company logo, the hat. And we're walking the building, and he's asking us how much it is. I'm like, because of the amount of land. I'm like, this building's probably worth like $20 million. He's like, really? And he's telling me how he bought it and how cheap it was. And he's like, and he just couldn't have cared less. He's just happy running his business, but just a character. Yeah. Running around, literally, we're walking the building. He's walking around with a broom, sweeping up after the guys that are doing the work. I want to go a little bit back into the kind of key strategies. Like you just mentioned surveys. Do you have, and the reason I mentioned surveys is even doing a survey for a company properly, is something you learn from proximity. So if you're new into this business, like this is something you learn being with a senior agent or being on a team. But like, do you have any like tips for a new agent that you would say, like a specific training maybe you do if you've been in the business a year or two, maybe programs that you have your junior agents do or something that you train?
I think the big thing is it's all about details. A lot of agents just put together a list of properties. They hear somebody say, "Hey, we need 20,000 square feet." They put together a list of all the 20,000 square foot spaces and send it to them, and that's it. It's really about the details. Why do they need 20,000 square feet? Is it an expansion? Is it a contraction? Is it manufacturing? Is it distribution? Is it local? Where are their clients at? What do they do in the space? How much power do they need? You just really have to dig into all the details. That would be my advice to a newer agent. Just asking questions can differentiate yourself from your competitor.
What you just said, the list of questions, that's a seasoned broker. If you're listening to this, somebody who can rattle off those questions off the top of their head. And the reason you ask those is, like you said, even distribution or manufacturing, like those two questions can ask, even jump onto the parking requirements are different. The power requirements are different. The office requirement is totally different. So, and that's something you learn through experience. Did you do any formal training as far as like, I don't know, there's like, you did Massimo, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm a Massimo client, I guess, or past client. Not sure what technically I am, but
a graduate,
graduate maybe. So I've done it 3 times personally, and then the team did it once. So we've implemented a lot of what Rod and his coaches have taught. Not all of it. It's kind of like drinking through a fire hose, but we've done very good on some fronts of listening to what he's had to say, and we've had some success with it.
We're in a crazy time right now. We had coffee the other day and we were talking about this. It is the it's the middle of August. We've got an election coming up in November. We all thought it was Donald Trump versus Biden, and now it's Vice President Harris is running against Donald Trump. So it's going to be a wild 90 days. I guess it's a little more than that, but yeah, it's about 3 months out. Where do you think the market's going to be going in between now and the end of summer? Or the end of the year? I mean, I'm personally getting a lot of people going, well, we're going to wait till after the election, which means it's a good time to write offers. But yeah, where do you think Las Vegas is going in the next six to 12 months, just based off of what you're seeing politically and what's going on in our market?
It's a challenging question, especially in an election year. I'm actually surprised though that our team at least hasn't heard more often leading up to August here that decisions are being put off because of the election. It feels like years past, we would always hear that, like 12 months before the election. Well, it depends on the election. Well, can't do anything now. So much uncertainty. I really expected to hear that the first half of the year. I didn't hear it that much. Now it's, as you said, things are heating up and people might put off their decision for 3-6 months. But I'm pretty happy that we did not hear that all year long. Where's the market going? I don't know. Where's Vegas going? I'm very, very bullish on Las Vegas. It's just changing. It knows how to change. That's what it does. My opinion's a little biased. Been here 20 years now. My kids are born here, raising them here, going to school. They're Golden Knights fans. Not Raiders fans. We're Steelers fans, but we'll root for the Raiders if the Steelers aren't playing. I'm joking, but we've got the professional sports team. It's just a different feel than it was, and it's all positive. I'm really excited for its future.
We're gonna blink, and I mean the A's. We don't know whether say the A's stadium's going over by the old Tropicana. That's half demoed now, and they're supposed to announce something at the old across the freeway by Panorama Towers, the old Wild West site. I don't know. I heard or read that they're supposed to announce what's going there in September. Have you heard anything?
I have not, but I wouldn't be surprised if we had basketball here in the next couple of years, and It's just fun.
Yeah, it is fun. The Raiders, the Knights, having baseball come. The sports adds a lot of element because it's something that people can get excited for. I love UNLV sports, but having the pro sports is really fun. So, kind of a spitfire last couple questions things. New agent coming in to the industry. If you had one piece of advice, you met him at a coffee shop, what would you tell them to do before they decided to get into this business?
Self-awareness is the biggest key, I think. Try to understand how they are wired and where their skill set might fit in, be it at a company if they're trying to find a brokerage, or when it comes to choosing a product type, or how they can fit in on a team or just with a mentor. What are they good at? What do they like to do? Are they naturally assertive or passive? Are they social, detail-oriented? What makes them tick? Where do their natural behavioral tendencies lean? Self-awareness will make it that much easier to see where you might be able to fit.
Yeah, like what makes you excited about the business?
Sure.
Kind of focus on that. And piggybacking on that is take your time. Like, I think you need to get your foot in the door, but some people seem really rushed, and
Sure.
you should take the time to go look around, look around and see. You might find something that turns you on or off. But so you have any big plans coming up? I can't believe I'm asking it for Thanksgiving and Christmas coming up. I know it's end of summer, but
Not yet. We always like to get out there and try to ski. Brian Head's been a big part of our winter, trying to get the kids on the slopes up there and learn to ski. So I'm always excited for that. But
it's one thing about Vegas that people don't realize is, like, we have our own little ski mountain at Lee Canyon, which is fun. When there's powder, I mean, you can go ski up there for an hour and be in the office by lunchtime. But Southern Utah, we've got Eagle Point and Brian Head. I mean, we've done day trips. Our office does like day trips where we leave. 4 or 5 of us will jump in a car. 4 a.m, we drive up, ski. We're back by dinner time, which is pretty cool. So that kind of company culture is great. Well, Eric, I appreciate you coming here and taking some time out of your Friday and giving some insight into your career. And I hope some people listening got some useful tips. I always learn some things. Like, my takeaway from this is that book. I have not read that. So the SIOR, was it the 7 Habits?
7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
I haven't read that, so I'm going to either steal your copy or download it when I'm in the parking lot walking out of here. So